quick introduction again. Like saw you guys last was it earlier this month? Yeah, it's been a long month. Uh, you know, things have been going up and down for me since then, but I started a year journey for myself in betterment in fitness, health, and what's it called? Just like enlightenment. So I already cut off vaping. I cut off drinking alcohol. Well, not as I told Diego last time. Like I'm trying to do bartending as a side hustle, like entrepreneurship, like bartending for private events or something like that. So since you guys always do side hustles, I was like, might as well do something that I enjoy, and bartending is one of them. So in my chapter, it was chapter 6. And one of the first things that I noticed, um, that he was talking about the behavioral psychologist Skinner, and as a psychologist, I really like resonate with Skinner because I think he really hit the note on a lot of people when it comes to behavioral psychology, which goes back into the beginning where he's like, hey, nothing's ever really unique. Everything you know is taught to yourself. The character, the main character, the author, how when he realized, what was it? Where was it? And now seeing that I was fated onto that path, programmed by my birth order to do nothing other than achieve. So that pretty much goes into what behavioralism is, where you are just a product of the people who taught you things beforehand. Like nothing saying my ambitions are unique to myself. They're just products of what I learned from other people. So what do you guys think of that so far? What do you guys think of that so far?
I think it depends on the personality. I can say from and not to discredit, that perspective, but I've seen children, for example. I think we've all seen children who you can almost feel unteachable because no matter what you tell them to do, they got their own way that they want to go,
Yeah.
and you may try to influence them in a direction, but they already know what it is they want to do, whether they know the reason or not. It's like with a lot of folks, you can try and steer them in a direction, but if they have some sort of feeling that is driving them in, to do otherwise or to believe otherwise, that's what you're going to get. But I do believe that there is a huge part of that perspective in that statement that he made that is true. People are like kind of the sum total of what they're taught from people and what they kind of break away from in order to embark on a journey to discover what their own is. That's my view on that.
Yeah.
I didn't hear the whole quote. How much? How much of a passage did you just read, or what's the specific passage that we're discussing?
So in the it's kind of like the introduction of my chapter, which is chapter 6, and I threw in a quick sentence from the prologue that really like connects to it, in my opinion. The passage is on page 5. One, two, three, four, fifth paragraph. If you have the book, but
Apologize. I don't have the book with me. It's kind of I'm actually spending time with my daughters today, so I apologize. I don't have the book with me, but I wanted to at least come in and listen in.
and then like continuing off with Skinner's like behavioralism, he goes to talk about the drug issues in the what's it called earlier in the 60s and stuff like that, and how they try to use behavioralism where it's if you change one thing about the environment, it's gonna solve all the other issues. But as we all know, Nixon was not a great president and pretty much caused great harm to the black and brown communities. And that's what he also goes off how we are not just experiments. We're not labs in a box, you know?
Oh,
You
just
just treat us like that. And just pretty much like this whole section is just looking at things through a psychologist perspective really makes me think more about it. Like, so if we're not capable to change, like if we're not subjected, we're not capable of changing through, like, means of studies and stuff like that, then what's the point of any of this that we're studying?
I mean,
Like,
when we look at it, man, everything is through history, it's through trial and error. Everything is opinionated, and when
okay,
you talk about behavior, behavioralism, and just how we are taught to act, it's based on our heritage, our culture, and our elders, and based on what they believe to be right. And today, in 2020, you see a lot of those things that we thought in the past were right is no longer correct to the new generation. Where, um, for example, social media is a hit for people to become millionaires, whereas in the past, if somebody who would make funny videos and be on the camera, they would be looked at as a joke. Whereas somebody now today is able to create a revenue stream for themselves. So it's being able to accept somebody who's stepping outside of the box and going the opposite direction from everybody else, and accepting that person and their ideas and seeing how you can help them instead of sheltering them and pushing them to the side, which may cause that breakout of depression or drug abuse or whatever the case may be.
oh yeah,
Lit, lit. Next man up.
I don't mind. So from the beginning, it was for me evident that the power in the book is that it's autobiographical, and it didn't seem from the introduction to be based heavily on theory. And I believe that's significant for a very intimate dialogue, to share a personal experience, basically to provide a testimony, to testify, and just give your experiential point of view versus theorizing and sort of putting people in a position to argue against something that feels sort of disconnected from a human experience because it's not something that someone says they went through. So I feel like my first draw into the book was that it started out autobiographically, and it was like a man who was just sharing his perspective and giving you a bit of his own story. And I feel that's important for people because when you give an experiential account of your life, it opens the door for people to view their lives in response to what it is that you're sharing, because there's an unbiased nature to just sharing your experience versus telling somebody what you think, especially when it's based on a theory or based on philosophies that come from other people. You're kind of in a position where you're just giving your viewpoint and people can take it or leave it, but you can't invalidate it because it's someone's experiential life. I loved that he introduced himself as a person who wasn't afraid to live as an individual, wasn't afraid of what living as an individual looked like or what it would feel like, when he talked about embarking on that journey by doing something that, was probably uncommon for someone his age in the time that he was doing it, and going out to allow very natural experiences to take place. And that was a great segue for the chapter that I had to read, which honestly was like a spiritual confirmation for me. I had a really strong connection to my chapter, which was you need people engage in person. And before this call began, I sent Diego an image. I probably sent it to the group chat, but I sent an image of a post that I made on Facebook 8 years ago, almost to this day. And the post was about the opportunity we have in connecting with one another as we continually pass by each other day in and day out. And, those connections having the power to be so much more in our lives. And, you need people engage in person was a confirmation for me and some of my own personal challenges that would sometimes keep me from wanting to participate in group activities or open myself up to being around more than one person that I'm not familiar with, which is something that for a very long time, not that I was uncomfortable with it per se, but I just wasn't interested in it for a number of reasons. And for the sake of brevity, I'm just going to say that it was a confirmation for me, because even going to this trip, going on the retreat, was a spiritual confirmation for me about meeting people and engaging in person, because I had to think about it a few times before I could say, yeah, I'm definitely going to go. I asked Diego, I said, well, how many people are going to be there? And I'm like, oh, I don't know, 15 people that I don't know, or 15 dudes that I don't know. I don't really know if I should go. I'm not really into that kind of thing. And I had to coach myself into realizing and accepting the power that is present in engaging with people, whether they're people you're familiar with or people that you're just meeting, because very often I can be very introverted and I rather sit in a corner and do creative things and write and be by myself, but it's not the healthiest way to try and progress. So when I read that chapter, you need people engaged in person, and it talks about the effects that technology, for example, and instant messaging, social media, direct messaging, text messaging, the introduction of the iPhone in 2007, the impact that it's had on the way we communicate, and the downside of what it's done to our communication, because you can be essentially absent in person, or you have a very broad acceptable or broadly accepted scapegoat to no longer engage in person, because you have this device that is sort of a, a barrier between you and people, and you can use it to keep people away from you by texting them. And he talks about the the power of, again, the psychological part of in-person engagement, facial expressions, tone, and just interpersonal presence with one another. And it it really is a huge part, in my opinion, of the American awakening. And I feel like this book, again, spiritually is right on time for this country, because even with what this pandemic has done to our ability to be near to one another, and the time that we've had to spend with loved ones, or the time that we've been forced to spend away from loved ones, or forced to spend just away from people in general, has sort of recalibrated our thinking about how important it is to deal with one another. It almost felt like coming out of, some of these lockdowns, that people were kinder, that they were more readily engaged, to smile, to greet you, to have a conversation with you, even with strangers. And just, reading that chapter about engaging in person was so powerful, because I've recognized just about everything that he said. Again, it's not theory. There are studies, and he also, again, autobiographically gives his experience. And the best part about it was when he talked about going, to his neighbors' houses and attempting to engage with them in person. Okay, this neighbor I haven't talked to in a long time. We spoke at one point 2 years ago, but we haven't spoken since then. Let me knock on the door, see how he's doing, and see if he wants to hang out with me. And just hearing what those experiences are like, and realizing that so much of the value of our lives is going to be in our intentional living in detail, being detail oriented in our lives, and taking these opportunities, to go beyond what the norm is considered to be, or go beyond your comfort zone. And he talked about how people received him, the relationships, that were built out of that first step. And you also think, in closing, because I'll wrap this up, so I can really just talk about, how great this chapter was, and how much I connected with it. You get a sense of how empowering it can be to see yourself reflected in your interactions with people. And you realize how much you can miss out on in life when you don't engage in person. And it gives people an opportunity to consider that in a world where we've opted for, technological communication and everything that it shaves off of the human, experience. So the opening of the book, that chapter, how my life has gone, what this season in this country has been like, what these past few years have been like for me, and even, this Facebook post popping up from 8 years ago, just all for me is huge confirmation. I think that the book is right on time, and it's just what the country needs.
Nice.
Sorry for my long-windedness, y'all.
No, that was good, man. That was pleasant to hear.
I think one thing powerful that you said is the fact that he came from from an experiential point of view. I think that did make it powerful. Also, I think what happens when someone's talking about their own personal experience is that it doesn't sound too prescriptive. It's not like he's trying to tell you the way something should be. He's telling you what it is from his perspective. I think that was a real powerful thing.
Piggybacking earlier off what Christopher said about needing people, it goes into my chapter how when during the end of Vietnam, all these soldiers came back home with drug addictions, to heroin and stuff like that. And instead of going to rehab and all that, they just stopped doing it. And it blew everyone's minds because, like, what every study shows that, rehab and all this and that's the only way possible. But they changed the environment a little bit in their studies. So they pretty much gave a rat in a metal box water and heroin that's diluted in water. And they will constantly take the heroin until they died. Now they just changed up the environment where it's like, all right, so they still have the water and the heroin, but now there's other rats and there's a play wheel, stuff like that, like what they call the park. So like all the time, pretty much the rats would never touch the heroin. They might taste it, but then they'll never do it again, because they'd rather be with other people. And it goes off to this what they call disease in the book, loneliness. And I think that really hits a lot of people. Continuing what Christopher said about people being absent, well, they're an absent, or just having an excuse not to really be there. Because with this phone, like this iPhone, I could just talk to anyone I want and be like, all right, now I don't got to see them, stuff like that. Like, it's good that we're having this Zoom call, but can you guys imagine the power we'll have if we're just all there in person right now? Like, it's great to have connections with people. But yeah, that's just what I want to continue off with Christopher.
Spot on, man. Spot on. Anyone else has a chapter that resonated with them?
Yeah, my chapter. I think I read the last chapter before the epilogue. It's called "Together We Will Awaken, Fulfilling Our Promise." And in that chapter, he spoke of a myriad of things. He spoke all the way from a judge named A. Leon. I forgot, Higginbotham Jr. And this judge was just like a very big propellant during his time, which I believe it was like from like 1940 to about when he died. I don't know exactly when he died, but I think it was prior to 2000s. And he was just a big person that resonated with the author, he said, because he was a clerk. The author was a clerk for him back in like 92, and he would recount these memories that he had of him just being a clerk and accepting anywhere from like one or two different members of an African community, like an African community from Africa, trying to seek the help of this judge to construct a constitution from whatever community or nation they were from, because these were nations that he was helping that were coming from apartheid into a democracy or a republic. And he would talk about how when he talks about keeping our promise, he also went back to he was using him as an example because he started the chapter talking reciting actually the Declaration of Independence, how all men are supposed to be created equally, by the Creator God and whatnot. And he said something that really resonated with me. He said he doesn't know whether if it's a self-evident truth or a self-evident lie, because clearly as we have abided by these principles or set these principles in when we declared ourselves our own entity as a country, America, we have not been able to fulfill our promise to every person, being, giving them these unalienable rights that we're supposed to give them, of equality and whatnot. So he really speaks very deep in that chapter about race, inequality between races, segregation, and just a myriad of other things. It was a really good chapter.
That's good, man. That's real good. One of the things, and I know I might be throwing a monkey wrench in it, because a lot of pleasantries I'm hearing right now. However, I am a man of tactful critique, and I feel like one growth area that could probably help the book is, so how do I put it? So throughout the book, there's themes of religion, and I love that there's various religions mentioned. The major books and quotations, excerpts, and all that good stuff. However, there's a part where he mentions that everyone has some form of God, or it's essential to have some, like, an entity or a presence that you see God is from. Now,
I think
my critique with that is that maybe the mindset of God being good, orderly direction, it's a concept that could be applicable to all different walks of life, even the atheists. Because like myself, I'm not a religious man. However, I was brought up in the church before I left the religion, and reading all the books and whatnot, and being a person who believes that there's a mountaintop and everyone has a different pathway to get there. If I was a stranger on the street who came across this book, a lot of the religious talk would probably have me like, I might not want to pick this book up. So I feel like he can probably specify what his definition of God is and how it can be applied to everyone else who might not be a believer of an entity in the beginning, before giving us the meat in the sandwich. You know what I'm saying? That's just my thought.
No, I definitely agree with you, Diego, because I remember in my chapter specifically, he mentions Christianity. So you can tell he's a Christian, but obviously not everybody follows under the ideals of Christians. Like, I grew up a Catholic. I know Akoa grew up Muslim. There's probably a myriad of different religious followings or philosophies that all of us follow just within this Zoom chat alone.
No, legit. And the one thing I do like is that he retains his author ingenuity, which is something I never want to take that away from a person who's an artist and whatever craft it is, whether it's writing, poetry, drawing, sculpture, whatever. Like, all I'm saying is that that's something I would want to discuss that with them. Like, hey, like, what is your definition of God? Beyond what the book said, because the book, like I said, it does a real good job. I want to have that private heart to heart, like, hey, these are my thoughts. What are your thoughts? And then build from there. See if there's a way to kind of, usher in that safety net that can encompass all different walks of life from the jump. You know what I'm saying?
you should get him on the Zoom call next week.
What was that?
You should get him on the Zoom call next week.
Oh, legit. That would be a good idea. I'm gonna reach out to him for that. For sure.
Just to touch base on my chapter real quick, it said you will face adversities, page 64. It's funny Diego picked that chapter for me because I definitely connected with it. It was a track athlete, was a female degree. But I know she had an injury to one of her hamstrings. I believe she had to have surgery, and she had to have one removed, I believe. And instead of having, because your hamstring is filled with 3 muscles, and she had one removed, so she was able to only utilized 2 of them. And the doctor told her that she would no longer be able to run. She'll no longer be able to compete in races. And she didn't listen to the doctor. She trained. She went through rehab. She went through physical therapy. The leg that was injured actually became even stronger than the leg that wasn't even injured beforehand. And she ended up winning even more races than she did before she got injured. And moral of the story, I just feel like we all gonna face adversity. We all gonna have people who doubt us, especially our family members, our friends, people closest to us when we come up with ideas sometimes, whatever the case may be. And you just gotta be able to remain mentally tough and dive down and believe in yourself when no one else will, and just know that whatever is for you will be for you. And from what I could remember, like that chapter was just deep for me, pretty much.
Yeah, that chapter. I know which one you're talking about. Cause I read the whole book before I pass it on to you guys. But
Yeah,
that, if you guys haven't read that chapter, read it. It's crazy. Like the way the body works, it's like it's good orderly direction. It's God right there. You know what I'm saying? Everything is in alignment, even though it wasn't from the jump.
right.
You know, at first she had this hardship, she overcame it and was like, you know what? I'm gonna just grind it and do it. Like if we had that kind of, intestinal fortitude in anything in life, like what makes us stoppable? You know what I'm saying? I really enjoyed that chapter.
That's that mind, body, and soul being aligned. You know that word.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like watching those paraplegics, those people who only have one arm, one leg, stuff like that, still compete. But you got somebody with all their limbs crying, saying that they can't do something simple. You know, it's crazy.
Facts.
I actually read that
How we
by accident. That wasn't the chapter that was assigned to me. But so I remember the story about the marathon runner. I thought, the thing that's part of what he was highlighting was the fact that she was faced with that adversity. She actually came back stronger because it seemed like in her high school career, if I remember correctly, she was good, but she wasn't elite. You know what I'm saying? And then when she came back with that, whatever that, having that injury sparked a fire in her.
Right.
Where she actually elevated herself. So it was like the presence of that obstacle actually not only allowed her to come back, but it allowed her to surpass.
Right.
And what she maybe even envisioned for herself, which I thought again, just going, that was powerful.
But to be honest,
it looks like she had cancer, I guess, too.
Oh yeah.
Stuff like that. So yeah, she still's been through a lot.
That's crazy, man.
She had surgery though, right, on her hamstring, right? Something like that.
But look, I wanted to add to that. It's that even though I haven't read that chapter yet, just from what Joel and Diego are saying about the chapter, it seems to serve very easily as a symbolism for all of our lives, because you said the chapter is you will face adversity, right? And I believe that is, foundational in all of our lives. And what happens with adversity, if you could kind of paint a picture that explains what adversity is like, and the opportunity that it offers you, the opportunity that it presents, and you just literally have to make an intentional decision to choose whether or not you want to receive that opportunity, to catapult yourself outside of something that could essentially block you if you don't choose to catapult out of it. Is that it's almost like, the tension that you use on an arrowhead. Anytime something needs to go forward, there's almost, in a lot of ways, some sort of an action that has to restrict it in a way, that has to pressurize it in a way. So when I think about that chapter of the facing adversity and how she had something to overcome, it's like if she didn't have that issue, there would have been no reason to explore the limits of her strength, explore the limits of her dedication. You almost have to be put in a position that would give you the opportunity to say, despite all of this, or in the presence of all of this, or in response to all of this, I'm going to do X, or I'm going to push more, I'm going to add more, and I feel like, the depiction for that in my mind is like when you put an arrow on line, you pull it back, and it's like that tension is like, and it shoots forward. So, I mean, I'm definitely going to check that chapter out when I get a chance.
Hey, man, I'm going to call you Chris Rodamus from now on.
Right?
The arrow. What?
There's
Bars,
more.
bro.
The girls left a lot of food if you want some. I'm going to put it to the side for you.
Yo, I really just want to take a second and really thank you, Diego. Like, I haven't read the whole book, but just that portion alone makes me want to go back and start from the beginning, because he was referring a lot of things to the beginning, a lot of morals that he kept, kind of closing in on. Because I think I read I think it was the last chapter I had, and I would have probably never found it if I never went to the retreat and you never gave it to us. And it seems like a really enlightening book, and I'm looking forward to reading the whole damn thing.
No sweat, man. There'll be more to
Likewise,
follow,
brother.
too.
Likewise, Diego, you the man. Give the man his
Nah, man,
flowers.
Absolutely. I
Nah,
left
man,
them
yeah.
somewhere back here.
One of the things I really like in the beginning, he talks about how, what you all read, how he just like booked it. He was like, you know what, I got $1,000. I'm just gonna just find myself.
Yep.
That
Chris.
I've heard that theme, and I've seen it depicted in various like shows that deal with like masculinity and the rites of passage a young man has to go through in order to find himself. Him doing that, like, it's inspiring, because like I think back, okay, what did I do to find myself as an individual? I had to break away from the nest and say, I got to do my own thing, blaze my own trail. And I feel like just having that intro alone is enough to captivate a reader and say, hey, you know what, like, I can identify with that.
Right.
Whether you've gone through it or you're that young guy who hasn't really quite pinpointed it, but there's a yearning that you need to satisfy.
That reminds me of this book I have, Into the Wild. Have you guys heard of it?
Yeah,
I heard.
Yeah,
I've heard
fucking-
the movie. I never saw it. I never read the book.
So yeah, like if you know it, it's a guy who just pretty much goes into the woods trying to like do something different, trying to like kind of find himself. And I think it's a good contrast where it's like, some people do take these journeys to find themselves, but they don't always come back, They might lose themselves physically to the harsh reality of the world, but who knows what they find along the way. He made great connections in his journey, and that's what really made this book powerful, in my opinion, as well. And with what makes American Awakening great is that he's using his journey experience and what he learned in his many years to pretty much like spread knowledge to people like us, or just anyone who is willing to grow, who is willing to get out of their comfort zone. And that's really what we need nowadays.
The capability to receive, the maturity to receive. It's a mature thing to admit to yourself that, hey, you know what? There's something out there. There are things out there where I can better myself. I just need to be willing to accept it. Especially with hard-headed people like myself. It took me years, but I got it eventually.
Better late than never.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Like they say, you can't pour water full cup. That leaves some space to receive.
Absolutely.
Indeed.
I think it was Plato or Socrates, one of the two, that said, the man that holds true wisdom is the man that has the wisdom to understand that he knows nothing.
Socrates,
right? Yeah, there you go.
Boom.
That makes sense.
I just played Assassin's Creed Odyssey, so I know all that shit.
Oh,
Lies. You were playing Call of Duty and saw the quotes.
I believe the overarching theme, I wouldn't even say theme, but the overarching frequency of the book is really just introspection. Like everything that is shared, again, to go back to that autobiographical tone that the book opens in, it really foreshadows the perspective that's going to be offered throughout the book. It's going to be very personal. It's going to be very layered. There are going to be a lot of details. and it's going to offer a reflection opportunity. And what I read in the beginning, what I read in my chapter, what I hear from you guys, the continuing theme is really that, you know, you have an opportunity to see yourself reflected as you read about another human's experience. And that's why testimony is so powerful. Just someone taking the time to share with you in detail what their experience has been in life, whether they're specific small moments or, you know, it's kind of like a broad timeline. It's very impactful and in a way where we can see ourselves, not necessarily always in likeness, but even in the contrast. But it puts you in a position to see yourself, whether it's because of the way you respond to what you read, and it's saying, hey, I've never had that experience before, but I've felt like I needed to have it, or, you know, that doesn't sound like something I'm interested in, and why do I feel like that? What do I think about, you know, that kind of a topic? It's very, you know, introspective and self-reflective. Like the entire book seems to have that vibe to it. So again, I think it's right on time for the country.
Enough said, enough said. That's what I'm talking about. All right, gentlemen. Well, hey, it's been a pleasure having you all here. I'm really grateful. I'm sure John's gonna be grateful to hear our review and our thoughts. I'll be in contact as well because I got something set up for the near future. So I'll hit you all offline in the text and run it by you guys, see if you guys are down for that. In the meantime, stay safe, stay blessed.
Hey guys, real quick. Diego, can you send me the book you let me, like the title that you let me overseas? And any other books you guys recommend I should read, please just send them in the group chat because I'm trying to buy more books and stuff.
Oh, plenty. Oh, I got a book list for you.
Yeah,
I still have
absolutely.
the book that you
I
originally
got one book that works for you right now, man. If there's one book I want you to read, is this one. I just sent it to you.
Gotcha. All right. Word. Thanks, guys.
All right.
Good.